So hello, welcome everyone. I'm Allison Posey. I'm here today. I'm at the CAST headquarters in Wakefield, Massachusetts, and this is part of our CAST free webinar series. And today we're talking about UDL stories from the field. So whether you're joining us live and chatting and contributing into that chat box, watching the recording later, so this will be recorded. We are thrilled that you've taken some time out of your busy schedules this spring. I know this time of year gets really busy in schools, but we're really thrilled that you're here and joining us and contributing to the conversation. And I also want to give a shout out to our captioner, Brooke. So thank you so much for captioning this so that if for some reason the sound comes in and out, you'll be able to get the transcripts. So our goals for today, we know that learners vary, and similarly, schools and systems and districts vary, including how they integrate universal design for learning. So today we're talking with folks from 3 different school districts from across the country. We have folks from California, the middle of the country in Indiana, and out here on the East Coast in Massachusetts, so that we can hear about some of their UDL journeys, some of their UDL implementation stories. We'll hear what their driving need was and what they hoped UDL would help their school and district address. We'll chat with them about some of the systems and structures that help supported their work and how UDL is having an impact, what they're seeing as being different. And so we really hope to hear some commonalities, but also some differences between these different stories. So those are the goals for today. But before we get started with that, we'll be hearing from our panelists who we'll introduce momentarily, but we also want to hear from you. If you have burning questions or comments or concerns, take a moment now and you can just practice contributing by answering this little, teaser of a sentence starter here. So spring flowers need water, sunshine, and nutrients. So we're curious, what do you need to make your UDL garden flourish? So if you want to contribute to that conversation, just go into the chat box and make sure you click to everyone, and that way everyone will be able to see your response. But we do also want to just make a note in terms of a discussion norm that I think is important for us to consider. If you do have comments that you do think might distract participants from the conversation that we're having, if you could please post those comments just to the panelists so that not everyone sees. If you do have a question that you really think might be disruptive to the conversation, we really ask that you not post that to everyone, but instead post it just to the panelists. Are there any questions about that? So we're getting a few ideas, which is great.
So I think if you stop share and then share it as full screen.
Okay. So let me do a quick, make sure you all can see my screen.
No, if you go back. Stop share.
Okay.
And then just click share again. Share screen. And then you want to click just PowerPoint. So stop share one more time.
Okay, I'm going to try it one more time.
Go directly to PowerPoint.
Right here?
Mm-hmm. And X out, make this not full screen. To presentation mode. And now if you go in, it should do it.
Okay, but I need to I need to see the chat box on the other.
I can show you mine.
Okay.
I won't be able to do that yet.
Okay.
So you just want to do a screen share. So you have to grab again. So I don't do screen share. Just do. Yeah, try that. Now do presentation mode. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great. So hopefully you all have had a chance to. All right, let's see if this helps. It still isn't quite showing everything. Okay, so we'll just keep going. And I will verbally, so we have multiple means of representation here, I will verbally say what might be missing from the bottom of the screen. Hopefully this won't impact too much. So goals, flexibility, and variability were 3 sentence starters, and then the 4th D is just your own choice. So So this is great. We're getting some goals, some buy-in. For your UDL Garden, you need folks to see the value in all learners and willingness to take risk by all stakeholders, flexible options, grow garden, grow. Excellent, a lot of goals. Faculty to realize that UDL is not teaching to the lowest common denominator, but a methodology to provide access to learning for all learners. This is very exciting. This was at all three, which is great. Flexible options, needing a team to work and collaborate among different groups of people working towards the same goal. More ideas, tight on goals, loose on means. These are great. All right. A mindset where I'm looking at changing my approach. Fabulous. Thank you. So I think this is just as a practice, this was a really great discussion. So great. And we do, again, just ask that you please respect that discussion norm. And if there's something you think will distract other participants, to just post it just to the panelists. So let me go ahead and take an opportunity now to introduce you all to our panelists. We have with us today Amy Williams, who's the coordinator of inclusive practices from Sanger Unified. Hi, Amy.
Hi, everyone.
And we have also from Sanger Unified, Zach Smith, who's a project manager in their district.
Hey, everybody.
From here, Revere in Massachusetts, we have Christine Gray, who's the middle school literacy coach and UDL facilitator. Hi, Christine.
Hey, guys.
So as they talk, hopefully you're seeing their video pop up. And we have Rhonda Laswell, who's the UDL coordinator from the Bartholomew Consolidated School Corporation in Columbus, Indiana. Hi, Rhonda.
Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. It's right. I guess it is almost afternoon for all of us across the country. And so you've already, so what I liked actually as I was looking at your bios is that you've all been teachers at some point, which I think is great. And we have representation from a lot of different content areas and grade levels. So a couple of you did contribute already, but do you all have an essential ingredient that you would add to your UDL garden?
Student voice.
You.
Yeah, so I put that it's really important to have that shared value system, and I forgot what the other thing was that I put, but the shared value system was really important. Oh, and a willingness to take risks and try new things.
Yeah. Kind of to add on to that, Zach, I think what I was thinking of when I added the collaboration is I think you really need good partnership between administration and teacher teams in order for teachers to feel comfortable to be able to take risks.
And from my end, it's be willing to go slow, to go deep. You know, that's something that we've practiced here in Sanger Unified. And just to mirror the other statement is to create a safe place for teachers and students to take these risks, to get dirty, to get messy, to skin their knees and learn from those opportunities.
And I would say that student voice is very powerful. You know, while predictable structure gives safety, within that there needs to be an embedding of flexibility and choice.
Fabulous. This is really, I want to be in these gardens. I want to see those flowers, those student learner flowers bloom. It's wonderful. So thank you. Welcome. And thank you for joining us today. I do know that schedules are really busy and districts have a lot going on at the end of the year. And we know that in order to integrate UDL, context matters. And so we've invited you all because you're from very different contexts. So I thought we would open just getting to know your district a little bit more. If you could just help paint that picture of your district. Who are you? And what kind of need or challenge were you hoping UDL might address? And what was it that made your district sort of say, this really could work in this context at this time right now? So Rhonda, let's start with you.
I am from Columbus, Indiana. We're about 45 miles due south of Indianapolis, roughly 12,000 plus or minus students. We actually have representation of students speaking 54 different languages here. So we're very diverse from that perspective. And we have about 11.7% of students identified with special needs. And we have 44% socioeconomically challenged, and we have about a 25% minority population and a 15% limited English language. And I think for us, it was really, and it's been wow, well over a decade ago. It seems like yesterday some days, and then it doesn't. But I think for us, it was really that need to align all of our random acts of improvement arrows. You know, in education, it's so easy to see an initiative and grab onto it and, you know, follow grant money. And then when the grant money runs out, what happens? Well, there's no fidelity and there's no sustainability. So for us, it was, we were looking for a way to align our arrows and have one big arrow. The other piece to that was we were really also going through a self-reflective time around 2002, 2003, and we were looking at how we were delivering service to special needs students. And so during that process, something came across our radar, which of course, you know, followed a grant and a book study, teaching every student in the digital age, along with Patents, who is a network here in Indiana for providing resources to educational agencies for assistive technologies and accessible resources. And so we jumped on that at the same time this was kind of all happening. And for us, it very quickly became, our eyes were open to the idea that, wow, this isn't just about technology. This isn't just about special ed. This is actually a framework we could use to align our arrows.
I love that visual image too. That is really helpful to think of what were on all of those little arrows and then how they were able to come together. I think that's a really helpful image. Thank you. So Zach and Amy, where are you from?
Amy, you want to take this one?
Sure. So Sanger Unified is located in the Central Valley of California, just between LA and San Francisco. And if you know Fresno, we're just a little bit southeast of Fresno, California. We have an ADA around 11,500. We are a growing district. We have 80% free and reduced lunch, and we are currently at 20% English language learners, so our demographics are changing. Traditionally, we've had much higher EL population, and our driver for universal design was actually through our superintendent, who participated on the California Special Education Task Force and their efforts in ways to find meaningful engagement opportunities or learning platforms for all students. And so through his effort and through that team, Universal Design for Learning just kept bubbling up as a meaningful way for all kids to have access to curriculum and to thrive in an instructional setting. Zach, you want to add?
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is that the other thing that was kind of a catalyst for this was Common Core itself. It created all sorts of like great problems for teachers, and I really do mean that, because they had to think differently about their representation of standards and retool a lot of what they taught. And so it created this vacuum that then UDL was a great, like, and is continuing to be this great support towards. And then it also, like Amy said, that picture there is of a bell curve, obviously. And we use that a lot with our people. Like, we want to get better at not having a narrow path for kids to go from unknowing stuff to knowing stuff, but having a really wide path. So the green representing a wide path and the purple representing the narrow path. And teachers really buy into that with the visual, and it helps them with their Common Core instruction.
Excellent. Thank you. And again, just so interesting to hear the different ways that inspired this work and the use of the UDL framework moving forward. Christine, do you want to add to that?
Sure. So I'm located in Revere, Massachusetts, which is about 5 miles north of Boston. As a district, we have about 7,000 students, and that's 52% of our students as a district have English as their second language, and 78% of our students live in some sort of identified poverty state. And so I'm specifically at one middle school, and that's where we have really focused a lot of our energy. And it's burgeoning out now, but this is really where it started. And so at my school in particular, we have it's called the Susan B. Anthony Middle School for the Arts. We have 569 students, And in our school, there are 83.4% of our students are high needs or economically disadvantaged. So high percentage of free and reduced lunch, and 59% of our students have another language other than English as their home language. And about 7% of our students have been here in the country for less than a year. So we have a and I think about 13% of our student population is identified on an ed plan. So for us, we kind of the need that we saw was that our population was drastically changing. So we were, kind of doing the same thing, but our students were changing. And so we saw it in standardized test scores that, just the things that we had been doing just really weren't working for these increasingly more diverse populations of students. And so ours, kind of similar to Zach and Amy, came from central office, where it started with central office administration seeking out professional development and learning about universal design for learning. And then the school that I work at, the superintendent had already kind of charged us with, like, we need to do something different. What we're doing isn't working. We're not servicing our students to the best of our ability. And so we kind of took UDL on as the something different that we were going to be doing. And I think we may have gone a little bit in the reverse, as how I think it was Rhonda described the random acts of improvement. I think we went all in with UDL, and now 5 years later, I'm working really hard to make sure that all the things that we're doing are still always connected to UDL, to make sure that people don't feel like it's just those random acts, and that this continues to be our main focus.
Yeah, and I think that brings up an important point, in that there really needs to be some need for change, that you're using UDL to apply. You can't really just have UDL, because otherwise, UDL for UDL's sake will feel very random. Mm-hmm. And so to really have something that's pulling it together, something that you're really hoping to build and grow and change for all learners, so that improvement can go for everyone. It's definitely not just for certain targeted populations. So while I appreciate and love hearing the range of students, of course, what we're seeing is there's the variability. We know that variability is there. And how can it make, how can UDL help to make those, help to grow for everyone, to stick with that gardening theme. And so you're in your context, and you're in your district, and there's this need, this challenge that you're hoping UDL will address, and UDL sparked an interest, whether it was from top down, as you were describing, or kind of across administrators thinking about it. So how did you initially get to know more about UDL and start to explore it a little bit deeper, and come to see it as a framework that really might help address this need for change? Zach and Amy, what are your thoughts in terms of Sanger's story? How did you begin to get beyond just that initial, hey, UDL is a cool idea, but to start to dive a little bit deeper?
Yeah, I'm going to let Zach start, because he was part of the initial group that went to Boston to begin the efforts and training. So Zach, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So with our superintendent saying that UDL is something we need to look into, we sent 2 teams on 2 separate occasions out to CAST. And I think some folks were like, well, we'll see if they come back, and they still think it's awesome. They came back and they thought it was like more than awesome, like, we need to do this now. And so that got everyone energized from a district kind of office mindset. And then it came down to, well, how do we do this? And then we started just talking to as many people as we could. We sat in and listened in on things like what you're listening in on today. And we heard kind of systematically that starting it from a teacher perspective, a grassroots movement of teachers has worked out well for a lot of people. And so we really tried to start there with pilots and things of that nature. And Amy, do you want to talk about pilots?
Right. So Zach, being part of that initial team, went back to his school site and started a pilot movement there. I came from principalship over to the district office to build our MTSS with the integration of universal design for learning. So with Zach and I kind of leading the charge, knowing that we wanted it to be an organic process, that we wanted it to come from a grassroots effort, Sanger's had success with piloting ideas and experiences. So we started out with just offering principles. We're going to start with Universal Design for Learning. We're interested in any of your professional learning communities that want to start playing and exploring. And so we got those early adopters in. For the past 2 years, for the first year, we really nurtured a small group of pilots. And by the second year, we were blowing up with PLC pilots that wanted to be a part and actually had to contain it a little bit. And so we've been tackling it from the pilot perspective with nurturing PLCs and their exploration. Zach has been playing a critical role in scaling it out through our grade level PDs. And simultaneously, we hold these like pancakes with principals where we gather our principals like at 7:30 in the morning at Denny's and start front loading them so they can stay just a little bit in step with where we're going, knowing what everything's on their plate. And that's how we have started to scale up our Universal Design for Learning efforts.
Rhonda, how does that resonate with what happened at PCSC?
Well, yeah, very similar with the pilot schools, absolutely. You know, after that initial contact and the book study and the grant that followed with patents, we moved to 6 schools developing a 3-year UDL technology focused action plan. And then from there, that springboarded into training building level teams in UDL and then writing UDL goals into the school improvement plans. And we likewise, of course, had a relationship and still do with CAST, and individuals went there. Actually, I was in the classroom at the time, made many trips out for training, eventually went through, you know, the UDL facilitators training as well. And we have since sent many teams as well out for the Summer Institute as well.
Well, and now CAST comes to your institutes, it comes to your site to learn from you as well, which is a really fun collaboration because it really is this combination of research to practice that really does start to come to life. Christine, what's resonating for you as you hear these stories, and what's different and unique to Revere?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a lot of similarities. The graphic in the middle there that shows the, you know, the blue arrows from where our drive for SBA came from, and then kind of going back up, you'll notice that the teacher's role is the biggest box, because I always have and still believe that the teachers play the biggest role in making UDL happen. And so for us, it was a few administrators went to, they attended the Harvard Summer Institute on UDL, and then they were really enthused about it and came back in the fall and in small pockets kind of started introducing it to us at staff meetings. And it was honestly, I mean, I remember now when it was first introduced and not really being able to pay attention at all because it was, you know, 3:30 and my brain was fried. But then, you know, one of our administrators at the time really spent a lot of time in classrooms that fall and just kind of observed where he saw UDL practices already taking place. So, you know, although I had never heard of Universal Design for Learning at the time, he started, all of a sudden I would get, you know, comments in my evaluation system cloud talking about how, you know, he really appreciated that I had shown multiple means of representation on something, and he must have known I was curious enough to want to know what that was. So I started Googling that, and we did this with the, you know, very purposely selected a few different teachers for a few reasons. I was the veteran of the group, and then there were 2 brand new teachers that the administration kind of sought out and invited us to go to a UDL CAST Academy, which I was fortunate enough to meet Allison at that academy. And she was patient enough to answer all my questions, because I think very quickly into the academy, I realized, like, oh, this is, you know, all those really great lessons that I had that went well, that's because I was considering things that were on the UDL guidelines. I just didn't know about the guidelines. And so I became very passionate about it very quickly and recognized, like, this is a common language that we can all use to design better lessons and have to make fewer you know, on the spot changes and just be more purposeful about our instruction altogether. And so we started really bringing it back to the staff very quickly. I will say, honestly, I think at times maybe too quickly. And that was because of our passion about it, and we just really wanted everybody to be exposed to it. So we did that for a couple, probably about a year and a half. And at the same time, though, kind of what Zach and Amy were saying was, we really tried to get other teachers to buy in through teachers. So I constantly would talk about UDL, you need to come in my room, I have to show you this is what I'm doing differently. And I was talking about my instruction in terms of UDL with all the same people that I would always talk about teaching with. And now I'm just throwing this new word in there. And so they became curious. So it was really like a contagion. We talk about it being kind of contagious and hard to ignore. And then we were also the pilot school. So the district invested a lot in the teachers at our school becoming invested and educated and knowledgeable about it. So we were lucky enough to have 6 staff members go to the Harvard Institute after about 2 years of learning about UDL. And that was huge for us, because that was really, just a big momentum push for us. And that our UDL team is about 18 people. And we had to kind of, like you mentioned, Amy, we actually had to do submit a letter to be on the team because it was so big and we needed a commitment. And so that really has been the drive. And that was 3 years ago, and we're still going strong with it.
One thing that's resonating is you all aren't saying this in days or weeks, you're saying years. And so certainly this is a process, and this is something that doesn't just come down one day and is decreed and then it happens. And so I'm very appreciative to in the way that you're really reflecting on the steps and some of the gradual processes and those teacher-to-teacher conversations that can be so important to have, those book study groups, some of those initial leaders that you're maybe going to and turning towards within your district and within some of your pilot sites. So as you started to integrate a little bit more, what are some of the key structures that you started to put into place? And were there moments where you went, oh my gosh, this is something different is happening here? And I think it's related to UDL. And so then again, that can be that encouragement that you need in order to say, let me start doing a little bit more and diving a little bit deeper into that. So if we could start this time with Rhonda, what were some of those first structures that were really important, and some of those changes that led you to keep going?
Well, I think a couple of our staff members developed a rubric just to allow teachers to begin to be self-reflective in their practice around the guidelines. And then in 2008, we received a grant, and we were able to hire a project director to lead the implementation of UDL at a district level, I think, which was very, very valuable at that time. And, while some schools were experienced because, they had been part of the pilot, and some schools might have been less experienced, that really gave some consistency from the top down to provide professional development, both to individuals if they requested it, or buildings if, administrators requested it, or we were also doing things at a district level too. So I think that was key. I think the other key piece is modeling this in your meetings, in your principal meetings where you're sitting down together. We made sure we were doing an hour to 90 minutes of professional development, and we were modeling UDL through that process. And then a lot of times those professional developments were taken by the administrators back to their buildings. But then this role of project director eventually morphed in 2012 into an actual UDL coordinator for the district. And since then, we've brought 2 other individuals online. So we now have 3 district coordinators, and we have a half-time UDL facilitator. So we have 9 of those in our 18 buildings.
That's incredible. So Christine, how did that resonate with Revere? I'm calling on you next because I kind of know what your role is.
So I'm the one of those. So we have, as you mentioned, Rhonda, we have had a partnership with CAST. I think we've attended 3 CAST academies, different teams of teachers. And we have tried to scale it out to the middle schools, I think, really. And I was the district UDL facilitator. At this point, we now they're called director meetings. So they're staff meetings that the staff has the option to choose what course they would like to take. And so we're running a UDL course for the second time for the second year in a row. And it's been a lot of, sometimes it's people that are new to our school, and then it's been schools from all around the district. So it's really nice to see that this continues to be important to our district. So they're offering these courses so that more staff members can learn about them. We don't have Learn About UDL. We don't have anything like the number of coordinators. It's really myself and the UDL team at our school that really drives it for the district. And so when new schools start to come in and learn about UDL, really they're kind of emailing us at our school and seeing what did we do wrong, what did we do well, and kind of getting help in that way. I think honestly it probably has taken off at our school the best, simply because we've had the most energy, time, and the largest number of staff who stayed here and are committed to it. And so, I mean, in terms of the structures, like professional learning group was incredibly important for us. Our principal actually restructured our whole day at the same time we were learning about UDL to allow us to have 1 hour of professional learning group a day by contract.
A day, that's amazing.
And that's been in place for 4 years, and that has been, I mean, I don't think we really started, honestly, by modeling UDL all the time in our whole staff meetings. And I think what would happen was, we would have 40 minutes dedicated to UDL in the staff meeting, and then all of a sudden, something else takes precedence, and now we're down to this 40-minute activity that we wanted to do becomes a 15-minute, like, hey, we really wanted to tell you this, and think about it, and we'll see you in a month. And that's really kind of what kept happening. And so we realized, like, if we wanted to actually learn about UDL at the right and appropriate pace and have it not be a 1 month, monthly thing, we really had to run UDL workshops and have it be embedded in all of the practice. So our team made a UDL tuning protocol. That was one of the first tools that we made, which was simply we'd been doing protocols already. Now we're tuning lessons, but we're using UDL questions. We're looking at all of our lessons through a UDL lens, and it's very unintimidating language. You don't have had to go to a CAST academy or have any formal education to be able to say, are my goals clear to my learners? And so those are the types of small resources that we started to create as a team that we could do on a more regular basis. And I think the changes that we saw were, people couldn't stop talking about what was going on in their classrooms, and they noticed differences in their students. And we definitely did some formal surveying of the students when we call them guideline challenge weeks, and when the whole staff was learning about the same guideline and implementing it every day, and we surveyed the students. But I think Allison knows our struggle has been trying to qualify something that we have been feeling for years, and trying to figure out, like, how do we get the numbers, or what data do you use to say things are different and we know they're going well.
Yeah, and that brings back, what is that need for change that you're constantly always in school systems trying to improve something. So getting that baseline measurement or data that you're using, so then as you start to integrate some of these UDL changes, you're able to then reflect back on almost what that baseline was. And so Zach and Amy, you've got quite an act to follow, because we've heard about UDL courses, modeling UDL and PD, rubrics, teacher reflections, district levels, PLCs, tuning protocols, guideline challenges. What were some of the things that you did to really start to integrate UDL at your site?
Well, we kind of started things congruently. So starting with coaching up and helping our administrative team understand what universal design for learning is, how it fits into our district goals that we have built on for the past 10 years, that this was a means for us to achieve those goals. Congruently running out with the pilots, and it's nice to hear that great minds think alike, because we were running experiencing what universal design for learning was in our PD. so that teachers and administrators could connect to what that feels like. Because when you feel something and it feels right, you have that that momentum to go back. Your students will like that. So a lot of the things that you're sharing were structures and systems that were good thinking, and we kind of mirrored. One of our strongest piece was our professional learning community, because it's been allowing us to scale up exponentially. So it was teams of teachers leaning into each other. We were also looking at that same data piece. We have a lot of qualitative data where the teacher's feedback is the student that, prior would malinger and not get to task, having that choice, that autonomy, that option and opportunities to work through the learning opportunities the way they want to, that student's getting to work sooner, the behavior is going down. So we're still playing along that lines as well too. Zach, you want to?
Could you come to the wall? In the interest of time, if it's all right, we're going to jump a little bit to the next slide, unless there's something burning that you have.
No, I think Amy got it. We're good.
So I want to give you an opportunity, Rhonda, to just take to share a little bit what's happening here.
Sure. And I want everyone to know too that we didn't fall into a honeypot of money or anything like that. We repurposed positions we already had to align with our value system, which became UDL. And there was only one position that was actually added to the general fund. Everything else was just repurposed, taking resources we already had and, repurposing those. And this is a big key piece, I think, to getting that professional development deployed at the building level. We created a process where a teacher could just simply make a request for educational planning. And in doing so, you can see by the form here, they would just, put in their name and what their primary concern was, what area they needed assistance with, and that would be handed off then to the UDL facilitator. But at the same time, we felt it was important. So you can see here, we've taken CAST's guidelines and principles, but we've made that an open interface of boxes so that teachers can type into it. And what we really wanted them to do is to reflect on their learning environment prior to that conversation. But if they needed the facilitator to come in and do some observations and then fill that out with them and for them, and then have that conversation, that could be a scaffolding piece as well. But that way, as they're going through the process, the fidelity is there to look at, well, what am I doing now? What is my need and my concern? And then where can we go from here? What tools, strategies, and resources can you give me to help me in those areas that support the implementation of UDL? And then finally, this is only one page of our teacher success stories, but we were very fortunate a few years ago when, things changed very quickly in the teacher evaluation world. Our state gave us the option of going with theirs or developing our own, and in PCSC fashion, we created our own. And so we partnered with IU, Indiana University, to develop a rubric, and this is one of 4 pages, and 50% of our teacher evaluation is the implementation of UDL. But the key piece of that is a few pages over in the professional development piece. You are actually given points for requesting assistance and asking for help. So it becomes a positive and not a negative.
Fabulous. And I know folks are asking, can we get these documents? And really, we can't read the documents. These are really just ideas for conversation starters, because what we tend to find is each district will develop these sort of success rubrics and use the UDL guidelines in their own way. So they're definitely not meant to be prescriptive, but they work for BCSC. Zach, did you want to add something here?
Yeah, just real quick to explain that last slide with that TED Talk. That TED Talk, we don't have time to watch it, but it really reinforces to me what we foundationally have tried to do is make UDL fun. And I know that in some of the comments it says you just use UDL to teach UDL, but present it differently, use a non-traditional method and all of those types of things. But that's just a fun little TED Talk. I wanted to explain what it was. It's something we've been watching for a long time.
I think and we'll make the link available so you all can watch it. It's, I think, lessons from the leadership, lessons about leadership. And it's very short and it can be a lot of fun. And really the idea being that you got to make, if you really want to start a movement, you've got to make it easy to follow.
Yeah,
and so all of these pieces that you're describing in here, those teacher-to-teacher conversations in the moment and modeling in a PD session, they're little things and they're those little moments. Oh, Mindy found it, thank you, Mindy. How to start a movement that you're able to then use as conversation starters, and those little moments, they add up over the course of years. Great, and so this is tag teaming a little bit to what we were talking about before, and just looking at, what were some examples of success? What were moments where maybe you walked into a classroom and you thought, this is different. Teachers and students are doing something differently, or student work is a little bit different here. And Amy and Zach, do you want to go ahead and kick off with this one?
Yeah,
Sure.
Go ahead, Zach.
Okay. So our pictures are on the ones on the left of the screen there. But some of our biggest wins have been having pilots solve problems of practice. So rather than saying, you need to do this, we're saying, hey, what do you want to do? Like, what are things that you would change already about your instruction? And then just use UDL to solve those problems. And then at the end of the year, we'll all just share out what we discovered in a universally designed way. So some folks have put together QR code scavenger hunts. Some folks had put together these great presentations, X, Y, Z. And then, so this is a little clip of, or not a clip, it's a little screenshot of one of the presentations from last year where this team said, we really want to be able to embed choices with this math. I'm sorry, I don't know exactly which math standard they're teaching, but and then here's how that happened. And so kids were using iPads, kids were using pencil and paper, they were using different forms of apps within the iPad. And so it created a great space for us. So it's a real big win when we all come together as a pilot and say, look what we did. And next week is our second year where we're all going to get it together and do it again on the 4th. So we're really excited about it.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what teachers are doing different. Teachers have always had kind of this menu where kids can have some choice, but I think the pivot is the intentionality behind their lesson design, about choices, about the types of options they're giving kids. It's much more intentional and thought out in terms of the goal or what's trying to be accomplished for them and the learners today. So that's been critical. And I think in terms of what students are doing differently, we've gone into some classrooms and the noise level is up because students are talking and students are making choices. Students are moving with different peer groups because now it's about, this is how I need to process this information and go through this action expression, not necessarily with my friend, but now I have an opportunity to do it with this group. And so I think those are some of the things that we are seeing qualitatively in the classroom about things that look different and sound different for us.
Thank you. No, it's amazing. Who was this fish example here?
I'm guilty.
I love it.
And exactly the same thing. You just feel a difference. There's a different energy, a different vibe. The teachers are coming out from behind the desk. They're more of a facilitator. There's more student-directed learning. There's engagement versus compliance. And there's a different energy there about students really becoming expert learners. You're seeing them exhibit those characteristics of knowledgeable, resourceful, strategic, goal-directed, motivated, and purposeful. And this was a professional development that I actually was invited to do with middle school students. And I had a teacher contact me and say, hey, I know this is what I'm utilizing as a framework to design and deliver my instruction, but when students are doing a presentation of learning, I would really like for them to understand so that their presentations can be more accessible to their classmates. And I'm like, awesome idea, would love to. Went and did that. And these are just 3 pieces of feedback that came from middle school students after like a 45 or 50-minute PD session on UDL. And they said things like, UDL is, what do you want the people to know? How do you want them to take it? And why should they care? And the one at the bottom I love is, UDL is how to engage the kids in learning and how to teach them in ways that fit them best. Kids just get it.
And then, then they take that home to their parents. They take that to the next teacher who maybe hasn't heard about it. And that can really, when it comes from a kid about their own learning, it is really hard to argue about that. Christine, do you have some thoughts? Or actually, let me go to are these your examples here?
Yes, yep. So just to kind of add on to what Rhonda was saying, when my last couple of years in the classroom, I started actually changing when the kids had to do a presentation, I gave them basically a middle school appropriate lesson plan like the staff used for their lessons to form presentations, and it had all the language of UDL on it, so they knew they had to engage and all those kind of things. And it was really awesome to see what the kids took from all of their teachers too. They'd say, well, I learned this in so-and-so's class, or this is how we did this in so-and-so's class, and so they built that into their presentations. I think just a couple of things I put here is, so we've been doing guideline challenges for a few years, and I think this is from recently this year. We just started making these observe me signs where just all the classrooms are really really open on many occasions. And so this is, the teachers would hang these outside their door and write what particular guideline they were focusing on and what they hoped to see, what they were trying to do in their instruction. And we made similar observation tools for staff members to collect their observations, what they saw. And then on the other side of the screen is that's us collecting what we're seeing in SBA classrooms, because I know that, so often when people are learning about UDL, especially teachers, the first thing they want to know is, what does it look like? And while it does look different everywhere and in every class, one of the struggles we continue to have is teacher turnover. And so we need to be we really wanted to have this bank of CAST has some great examples of what it looks like on their website. And what I did was I just kind of took and reformatted that document and said, this is what it really does look like in our school. And so the pictures are pictures from actual SBA classrooms, and that all came from the peer observation. So as a staff, we're going out, we're observing each other, we're collecting evidence, and then we're compiling it in this document so that we can continue to learn from it. And that is just a video. That link there, when you get a chance to watch it, is just specifically about engagement of some of the work we see going on in the classrooms. And it's narrated, I think that one is narrated by students. And so that's definitely a big change for us, is going to the students a lot more often.
And did you want to touch any more on this piece here?
No, that's the collection. So I mean, that's just something, we have one of those for as many guidelines as we've worked on, and it's definitely a work in progress. But I'm in a lot of classrooms, and so when I see things that I know, I mean, we have so many people on our UDL team that are so knowledgeable about UDL, and also it's just become the way they think now, that sometimes I think they also take for granted how much UDL influence is really in their practice. And so I kind of use my role to help them explicitly see the things that they do, because they definitely are more intentional. They just almost don't even realize it, because it's their whole way of thinking now.
And it may take more time at the beginning, but then it does really start to become part of your practice that you're not even aware of. And I also like how you noted, it's not like at one point you go, all right, did UDL, check it off. It really is always about consistently iterating and designing. And the goals change, the students change, everything from year to year. You're constantly iteratively designing it. So because I want to make sure we get to the last few questions, we're going to do a speed round this time. So barriers and tips. What are some barriers that you faced and some tips that you recommend for folks? So speed round, Rhonda, you're up.
I would say for us, it was just making sure the message was, from the top down, the bottom up, very consistent across the board. It's not one more thing, it is the thing. And, if it's your value system, then you're going to just filter everything through that. And unfortunately, in education, we think that this too shall pass. And this is something that is not just something else that's been repurposed. This is really research-based neuroscience, looking at the networks of the brain and how learning works. And I think one of the barriers is just getting teachers to buy into and grab onto the fact that it's a belief system and it's not a checklist.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Zach and Amy, speed rounds, barriers and tips.
All right, Amy, go for it.
Yeah, what Rhonda said, it is really a value. It's a lens that you look through. It's the way you approach student learning, community interaction, staff interaction, universal design really becomes a value statement. I think one of we took it through a general education through our C&I department because we wanted this to be part of what everyone does for all kids. And so we were very intentional about that. I think some of the barriers is allowing the time for teachers to play, for them to get to support, to nurture the process. And just going back to those scale-up efforts, we really want to change mindsets. We want this to be a meaningful, sustainable way we do things. So, same.
Fabulous. Thank you. And Christine.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all kind of face, well, the names of the barriers might be different. I think we all face kind of similar barriers with just teachers being overwhelmed with so many demands. And so I think my tips and my barriers are kind of related. I think just exhibiting extreme patience and recognizing, never losing sight of the fact that staff members are just learners. So all the compassion and patience that you would have when you go and teach a classroom, never forgetting that the staff members are just learners and they have affective networks which are overloaded and need to be considered, and trying to really make the connection between all the things that you are asking teachers to try, saying we're trying this because we do UDL, or because we do UDL, we're going to try this because they're related, and just making those connections.
So pie in the sky vision, if UDL continues, or when UDL continues to grow and develop and change and really be part of your system, what do you really hope to see in your learners, in your community? Amy and Zach, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. We really want to see kids that know themselves. Like, they know how they like to learn. They know what they need, and they know how to advocate. And we want to see smiles and laughter and noise, and places where folks think differently about how to solve problems. The other thing that we really, I think that we're trying to preach this, we're trying to model this in our mindsets, is seeing those kids as the ones that drive us the most crazy, as the ones that are the best for us, because they make instruction better. So that flipping that switch. So if you come from a historically lower socioeconomic school, or you come from a school with a lot of challenges, UDL empowers you to say, no, those are actually really good. Because when I design in such dynamic ways, my kids do better and I become better as a teacher. And so that's something that I think if we can have that from a kid level and a systems level, like, we don't even know, like, we don't know what the next steps are. And I get really jazzed about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that gave me the goosebumps. Rhonda, what are your thoughts? I saw you nodding your head.
Yeah, I mean, we just want our students to know how to be expert learners regardless of context, and to be able to approach challenges and tasks, you know, in and out of the classroom, because the learning environment can be anywhere. And I would say banning the average and designing to the edges.
Oh, I'll go ahead there. I love that. Christine, what are your thoughts? What's your vision?
I don't know that I can add, I mean, all of those, and I'll add on to that plus. Also, just I think breaking down the barriers between real world and school.
Yeah.
For me is, you know, I have my own children, and I think about I don't want them to feel like they play school and then they go and live in the real world. I want them to feel like school is a real world, but for young people, and they need the skills, and they need to be engaged in their community, whether that's their classroom, their school, their district, their, you know, whatever it is. That's really important to me, to provide kids with the skills and also the motivation to go out and do the things that they're passionate about.
Wow, you all are giving me the goosebumps, because not only are you talking about the way that you've supported your students and your staff, and valuing UDL and nurturing the process and really thinking about intentionality, but you're exuding that energy and vibe right now. So thank you for that. And we don't want to leave without sharing some resources, because hopefully we piqued your interest to learn a little bit more. So you'll see a handful of, I guess, let me give you all a chance to just briefly share some of those must-have resources resources. So Christine, do you want to go ahead and begin?
Yeah, quickly, I added the cast, the logo for cast, because I got caught in a black hole of cast for a long time. And really, so many of the resources that I've created for our teachers to use really have just been reformatting the fantastic information that's on cast to make it more palatable for the staff that I know, which is what teachers do when they bring it in.
And that's exactly what we want you to do. Take it and say, this is close, but not quite, and make it better so it's more relevant for you. Thank you. Rhonda, what are some that you recommend?
Well, I love Universal Design for Learning Theory to Practice, because not only is it available as a book if you're that kind of person, but it's also available digitally, which is great. You can create a login and you have access to it, and it's embedded with layers of videos, and that's awesome. Design and Deliver is great just to put in the hands of teachers, and UDL Now as well is awesome. This is the TED Talk on the myth of the average learner, which I absolutely love, and I love his book too, The End of Average. Yeah. And then I have found the Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain to be powerful, because she really talks about the networks of the brain. And while she doesn't explicitly say UDL, the connections are crazy off the charts.
Fabulous. Thank you. And Zach and Amy, what are some of your must-haves?
Go for it, Amy.
Oh, well, I just want to highlight, I see Zach added the Sanger Learns website that he updates regularly on UDL. Giving examples and blogs about universal design and the work that we're doing, as well as resources to access. So just everything that's on this page, yes.
Oh, one thing too, any UDL video, I forgot what they're called, but there's the videos where you're watching UDL in action on YouTube that y'all did. That has been really helpful for teachers. We sit down, we pause them, and then we call out the guidelines that we see. And then we play, and then we see if they match with what is seen. And that's been very helpful, because everyone wants to see the nuts and bolts of UDL as well as the theory. And so that's been a helpful resource.
And that's great. And what we hope ultimately is that you start to replace our videos with your own videos. So what's happening in your practice, and what conversations can you start to pull from your own district? So I think that's fantastic. And of course, we do hope, so CAST does continue to build our repertoire of what we have. So we have a symposium in the end of July and beginning of August, July 31st to August 2nd here in Boston, Massachusetts. We have in September, we're actually going to be collaborating in partnership with PCSC in Columbus, Indiana, where you can learn some of the UDL theory and then actually visit their classrooms, which we often hear, what does it look like? You will get to go visit classrooms in PCSC, which is very exciting. CAST has a whole research team that is continuing to work on learning about the brain. We have a publishing, so again, if you have ideas that you want to have published, or just see some of the latest books that are out in our professional learning, we are consistently having institutes and online courses that we hope that we will continue to iterate and design and try to improve based on the needs that we hear from the field and from the feedback that you all are sharing with how you're bringing it to life. So I really I want to thank you all so much for joining today. Zach and Amy from Sanger Unified, Rhonda from BCSC, and Christine from Revere. You've said so much. I can't wait to go listen to the recording. And really, there is so much information in here about how your district has brought it to life. I know that teaching and learning is very hard. We are in a very hard business, so I thank you for all the work that you're bringing, the effort, and for really trying to always look at how it's impacting those students, and we're keeping it on that learning that's happening, those opportunities for them. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Do you have any last words or any last pieces for the growing UDL garden from your districts?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Dive in.
Don't wait, just get started.
That's perfect. Thank you all so much. We'll stay on for another 2 minutes if any of you from the audience have last minute questions. Otherwise, please have a wonderful afternoon, a great last 6 to 9 weeks of school before summer vacation. And again, please reach out to us. So this is just the start of the conversation, and one that we can continue to have in many different venues and meetings. Thank you so much. And Matt, we look forward to having you here at the symposium to get to learn about some of your work. I'm glad you found those videos. Patty, I love that you called it a party. This is great. So I do, since it doesn't seem like any questions are coming in, we'll go ahead and stop the recording and close out. I want to thank you all so much for this conversation today. I knew this would happen. I knew we would have to get a little rushed at the end, so I apologize for not pushing a little more at the beginning.